Christmas came early for fans of the Philadelphia Eagles when their team overthrew the Houston Texans to keep their playoff hopes alive. It was a thrilling matchup, and of course much is being said about the stars of the show, but there was one star who really didn't light up the field on Sunday afternoon, and that man was Texans defensive end J.J. Watt. One of the most productive, most dominant pass rushers in the NFL, who has 14.5 sacks alone this season, was held to nothing but 3 tackles. No quarterback hit, no sack, no forced fumble, nothing. Watt was a non-factor against the Philadelphia Eagles, and it was Lane Johnson who was responsible for keeping him quiet. But Johnson has had some struggles of his own this season, and struggles that have resultantly seen him drop out of the Pro Bowl race, something that didn't sit too well with the franchise offensive lineman. So just how did Lane Johnson bounce back from his injuries, and how did he shut down arguably the NFL's most lethal defensive end? My name is Liam Jenkins, and this is your festive Eagles Film Room. Before we get started though guys, a huge thank you to every single one of you who has subscribed this year. 5,000 subscribers was a milestone I really didn't think we'd reach, so thank you for all of your support. If you haven't hit that big red button yet, it would mean the absolute world to me. And don't forget, you can read all of my and 20 other writers' content over at phillysportsnetwork.com every single day. It's been a rollercoaster season for Lane Johnson, but somehow against the Texans, none of it seemed to matter, and Johnson looked like the Pro Bowler that we all come to know and love. And on this deep shot touchdown to Nelson Agholor, the 83-yard bomb, a lot of it was possible from Johnson's absolutely stellar work up front. Now, J.J. Watt is going to attack Lane Johnson with a stab, so he's going to violently try and push his way to the quarterback and use the outside arm to drive round and make the hit. And this was something that hurt Johnson in previous weeks, but not this time. From a 45 set, he's able to take a nice drop back, keep his shoulders squared up against the elite defensive end in this matchup of gladiators, and look at that, uses his outside arm to try and drive J.J. Watt around the back of the quarterback. So instead of letting him push back inside, he's driving him round, which is the exact opposite of what Watt is trying to do. If you compare this to what we saw against the Vikings, where Johnson is unable to get that outside arm hinged on a defensive end, it's a completely different situation. Danielle Hunter in that scenario is able to almost bully his way and swipe through, whereas Johnson is so balanced, has such a strong centre of gravity, it's like a brick wall again. Both of those feet are planted, they're constantly resetting, and we didn't see that in earlier games this season. Again, using a compare and contrast against the Minnesota Vikings, watch how Johnson is unable to 1, get his outside arm on the defensive end, and 2, the feet are constantly moving around. He's unable to get a firm base to really plant and drive the defensive end back with. And that is what you need with some of these elite talents like J.J. Watt, who will bully and really power their way through you. Johnson needs that firm base to drive forward, and for whatever reason he was being knocked around. It may well have been the high ankle sprain. Back now to the Houston Texans, and look at the difference. He puts that back leg down and drives up because of it. There's very little movement from the upper body. He's driving from the legs, and that is the difference it makes. He's able to keep contact, sustain the blocks, and even though Watt is an absolute angry bear trying to wrestle his way around the outside, it's no match because Watt doesn't have the upper hand. Whereas if we compare this to what we saw against someone like Derek Morgan, number 91 of the Titans, who is 6'4", a very big body, Johnson kind of overcompensates for that inside block and almost just lets Morgan go around the outside and allows a quarterback hit. We didn't see that. Even in this situation where the old saying, the lowest man wins, J.J. Watt trying to swipe his way underneath with that inside arm. It's such a textbook J.J. Watt maneuver, and look at there, it seems he's got momentum, but because of where Johnson's position, he's able to drive and push J.J. Watt around the long road. He doesn't want him taking that inside track, not taking shortcuts, and even where Watt is hesitating, Johnson is glued to him because that lower body now is far better. It's easy to kind of look at it and say, do you know what, Lane Johnson was struggling because of a high ankle sprain, but just how badly was that impacting him? When you're constantly reshuffling your own weight and then maybe upwards of 300 pounds of someone else's, that's a big load to take on one leg. And J.J. Watt there again tries to swipe underneath, and Lane Johnson is just going to throw those hands down and push him back, and Watt was getting increasingly frustrated. There's only so many moves a pass rusher can have, and none of them were seeming to work because Johnson is now squared to his target, as we see there, and he's making it a 50-50 matchup. there is no advantage to the pass rusher. They can't cut inside, and even there, where JJ Watt uses his almost hammering motion to try and chop down the hands of Lane Johnson and then swipe round the outside. He tried everything, every trick in the book, and Johnson's just able to keep that hand underneath in a near forklift motion and push him around the long road. It didn't matter what JJ Watt tried. It's as simple as that. You don't need fancy terminology. You don't need an analytical eye. All you've got to see is the fact that Lane Johnson is driving forward with confidence, with strength, and that ruthless aggression. Now, this play may be my favourite because Watt initiates a stab, tries to cut underneath, and Johnson almost rolls him off of his body and pushes him facing the opposite direction. So Watt starts trying to come towards the quarterback and ends up facing his own teammates, which is a little bit ridiculous. The fact that Johnson didn't make the Pro Bowl, though, is going to land on a couple of games, the Vikings and the Titans. Johnson wasn't an elite right tackle all year round, but what we're seeing here against arguably the NFL's most dominant defensive end, where Johnson is making it child's play to keep him silenced, to keep him smothered. He didn't get a sniff of the backfield. He had one tackle for a loss, assisted by someone else. That was it. That was absolutely it. Lane Johnson is back to his best. He's picking up stunts, throwing down guards like it's nobody's business. Just watch this here. The communication and the IQ between himself and Brandon Brooks. He knows he gets a chip from Goddard, lets his man fall on him, and just throws him across the face of Nick Foles. That is power. That is a pissed off Lane Johnson. And we know we've seen this towards the tail end of 2016 after the suspension. We saw it in last season as well. We're now seeing it again. When Lane Johnson plays angry, there is no one better. And on one of the biggest, most clutch plays of the game, that happens. Look at the IQ of Lane Johnson in this situation. This isn't just a regular football play. Himself and Brandon Brooks are absolutely on their A game. The Eagles driving down the field late in the fourth quarter. It's a huge moment for the team. The Texans are going to run a twist. So JJ Watt is actually going to try and attack Brooks. And the worst part is that this is a NASCAR package. You've got Christian Covington, Jadeveon Clowney. There are some big names here. And somehow the two offensive linemen do their job perfectly. They don't hesitate whatsoever. They plant their feet. They pick up their responsible target. And the rest is just a simple solution for Nick Foles. But if we compare this to what we saw against the Vikings, where Johnson almost hesitant to initiate contact, and the result is Wentz being absolutely clattered. We see another example of that here against the Titans. This is taken from the earlier film room video trying to work out what was wrong with Lane Johnson. He ends up just with his outside arm trying to keep number 55 at bay, and then just lets him go and watches helplessly. There was no overcommitment to it, and I think that may have been hesitance due to the injury, or that he didn't want to overcompensate. If you have got someone charging you with a full head of steam, someone like JJ Watt, and you've got an injured ankle or you're not at 100%, you're going to do very little in keeping him at bay. So you want to really narrow that window and really niche that contact until you physically have to, and then give everything you've got. That may have been what it was. But the fact is very simple. Going in towards his final game, Lane Johnson is playing at the best I've ever seen him play. To take someone as elite as JJ Watt, a man who is widely considered across the NFL as the most devastating defensive player from the last 10 years, and just hold him to 0 QB hits, 0 sacks, is absolutely phenomenal. And there wasn't anything dramatic that changed this. It wasn't like Johnson had suddenly turned into Superman. Johnson was just being Lane Johnson, and that is the best right tackle in the NFL, with sound fundamentals, with a lot of power, and a nasty ticking attitude that just wants to see him bully the man opposite, no matter who it is. If you've liked this episode, guys, please hit that like button. I would love to get to 500. Thank you so much for all of the support on the Avonte Maddox Film Room. If you're new, hit subscribe. If you're not, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. From myself, Liam Jenkins, I'll see you next time.